one favor. This is the fourth time I've asked for a favor this week. Remember the stars. Remember the stars.
There used to be a club called Indianapolis Friends of Florida College. Formed to be somewhat of a Midwest Indiana, mid-central Indiana booster club for Florida College. They would meet one Sunday night a month, and basically it was some older folks, John and Ellen Wright, Denver and Mildred Niemeyer, Richard Greason family. But they would meet on a Sunday night, first Sunday night of the month at somebody's house, and they would have these big plans that never got carried out. Then it was decided, because there was a camp in Ohio, that maybe the Indianapolis Friends of Florida College ought to have a camp. That's when they asked us to come involved, and the very first camp they ran was down at Brown County. It was just called Brown County Camp. That was in 1982. Bob Dickey and Charlotte Dickey were the ones that were to run the camp. It was very loose. Nobody really had experience how to run a camp. So what happened was they may have maybe 40 kids, 45 kids, and they'd have maybe 15 counselors, and they'd put all the families were on the same team. And then they decided they didn't want to do it anymore after 83. Not that they really wanted to do it in 82 and 83. So they wanted to know if Connie and I would do it. We decided to move the camp from Brown County over to Shakamak State Park and rename the camp Midwest Summer Camp.
Oh, second. Watch this. Go get it. Okay. Now.
That's cabin.
There was Ronnie Walker was the sports director. And Ronnie and I came up with a plan for the 1984 camp, because it was Olympics, to make the camp centered around the Olympics. This is where the obstacle course was introduced. This is where a lot of the sporting things, canoeing was introduced, things like this as team competition. The kids really enjoyed that competition. Even the ones that weren't athletic, they enjoyed it because there was something they could do.
My name's Mark Newton, and I'm the current president of the Indianapolis Friends of Florida College. We
were first introduced to MSC through Julian and Lydia Owens, and then we spent 2 years as team captains, and then Steve and Connie stepped down and the board asked us to direct. When I first realized that, yeah, this is something we really want to do, it was canoe heats, and they used to always be on a Thursday afternoon. So we were down at the lake. Our team was just tearing up the water. I mean, just crazy. As soon as our last life jacket hit the ground, our kids turned around and they didn't just start cheering for the other team that was in the water at the same time. They started turning their canoes for them. When your involvement in sports is school sports, you don't see that kind of thing. This little girl came to camp and she had never done anything athletic. She told me one night she couldn't ride a bike. You know, we got her out there and you put a bat in her hand, and immediately one of the older kids came over. I don't even think it was on her team. I think it was the other team. Came over and said, "No, let me show you how to do it." And he batted for her. That's just kind of heartwarming. Before that week is over, we did not send her home an athlete. She wasn't going to go home and break any records, but she would try.
If you look back on it, really understand what we were doing, we were trying to develop kids to understand what life was going to be like. There's nothing like seeing a 16, 17, 18-year-old girl get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and get out there on the sports field and do things and absolutely cheer on everybody else to do things. And they looked like they were there because they loved to be there. The one thing I think about the most is the number of people that have volunteered to be a part of the camp, are the ones that helped build camp up to where it's at today. Parents that are sending their kids that went to camp themselves and sending their kids. Camp lives on, and it lives on because of the vision of those early days, and the early workers that did that and the ones that have carried on that vision and improved on that vision, that seed. But now it's a product, that product of developing a child to where that child understands this is what life is going to be like. And when they get older, they can say, I ran that obstacle course. I know there's going to be times I got to get in the mud. I know there's going to be times I got to get under the picnic table. I know there's times I got to climb over the picnic table. That's life. On the obstacle course, we'd run them down through the amphitheater, and they wanted to go under picnic tables, and we wanted them to, and it'd be mud. They'd be mud from head to toe. And at 2 in the morning, I'm making the rounds of kind of watching, and I just was worn out, so I was sitting on top of a picnic table. And I look over here, and it's like 2 in the morning, and here comes about 10 guys out of that cabin, the older boys' cabin, and I'm thinking, their counselors were dead asleep in there. And they got lined up, and they started running, and they started diving in this mud. And they were just having the biggest time, being quiet, just diving, and I'm watching them the whole time. It was just one of those things to me, I thought it was hilarious.
My name is Sally. I ain't got no tag. One day, doorbell rang. Mama said, Sally.
Before one of our activities one night, one of the counselors said, I'm going to fill a bucket full of confetti, just torn up paper, and they think it's going to be water, and throw it out. So I said, well, hey, yeah, that'd be fun. Go ahead and do that. I said, well, I'll go sit on this front row tonight. The kids are going to think it's a bucket of water. So they did it, and they threw, and the kids were all excited. Well, it was a bucket of water, and it came all over me. Oh boy, the kids laughed and laughed and laughed.
And he just lived right over here, right by the water. Anyway, his name was Big That Book Up. And Mr. Big That Book, I'm already talking to you.
Unfortunately, the relationship with Florida College and the Indianapolis Friends of Florida College kind of got strained because we found out that they wanted us to do a lot of things that would cost the camp so much money to do. And we couldn't do those things, and we didn't think it was fair for them to ask us and want to control our camp, and that's really what they wanted to do. So we had kind of started breaking that issue off of Florida College. And we had to offset some of the things that maybe Florida College wanted to put in. We had to offset some of the things that people wanted to make it more of a biblical camp, a Bible camp. And we stayed focused on doing that, and we stayed focused with every counselor saying, this is not your camp, this is the kids' camp. We were down at the campground at the amphitheater one night, and the stars were just extremely bright. And that day we had had several campers that really had taken on and been good stars. I mean, they were just shining. But so I just started talking about stars and so what kind of stars do you want to be? And that started a tradition to where later on I would give it every year, the story of the stars.
I was thinking about my great niece, Kelsey Harris. Yeah, she was one that came till she couldn't come because she got a brain tumor.
You know, Kelsey was diagnosed with a brain tumor on February the 4th, 2008. Within 2 weeks, she had brain surgery, and within 3 weeks was a patient at St. Jude in Memphis.
And she made it a priority to get involved. And I forget how many presents were carried to St. Jude's from people that, you know, collected just toys or anything that a child might want. That's when the nurse said, you know why you're here, don't you, Kelsey? She said, yeah, but life is more interesting when you're happy. So she had that attitude. I mean, after her surgery, she was partially paralyzed on one side. She never let that influence her. She went out just like all the other kids and did what they wanted to do, you know.
Kelsey was one of those kids, I mean, she just enjoyed life. And when I was a sports director, I really had one major goal in the obstacle course, and that was I wanted to see how muddy I could get the kids. And Kelsey loved it. She's coming through that with just this big old grin on her face, because that's how much she just enjoyed that mud. I shared with everybody how Kelsey had wanted to be able to walk at camp. And when I said that, I said, but Kelsey, you didn't walk this year, you flew on wings like an eagle. So because of that, the next 3 or 4 years, we started a foundation in her name, but we sponsored what was called the Kelsey Harris Wings of an Eagle Award. That award was awarded to somebody like Kelsey who loved camp, who camp was 365 for them. What we did is we gave the kid his or her next year's camp for free.
If I were comparing camp, it would be like planting a field. I can bring the seed, I can prepare the soil, I can do everything right, but the magic happens in the soil. And the magic that makes it is not something I do. And camp is that way.
And so you look at it and say, I believe in the years we ran it, we set the tone for that. That seed, that vision is what camp's got to be about. That's why I always say that's what camp's all about. What's it all about? Developing that young person to where years later they come up to you and say, thank you for that 1 week a year that has helped me develop and be a better parent to my children, be a better person. That's planted, and it constantly is growing and growing and growing.
When you have a last year camper group that hits the ground saying, here's what we want to do, you know, and here's why we want this camp to be the best camp ever. It is what you make it.
We get it ready, we prepare everything, we bring the equipment, we set up the schedules, but the magic is what you bring to camp every year, and that's what makes it special.